right to it. This is the third presentation Joe Minicozzi has made. Joe is the principal from Urban3. This is his third presentation on this visit to Athens. He had a chance to spend time with the elected officials last evening. We had time this morning with a chamber-sponsored event, so we had business folks and institutional leaders and other community stakeholders, about 70 folks. And that was the Q&A part of that this morning, and the Q&A portion of last night was super informative for staff, for us as we move forward, because the reason why we have Joe here is to help us take a moment and inform how we're making decisions about land. And that's a pretty dry subject, so we sought out somebody who's not as dry as us. Somebody who can tell a story, who can capture your attention and do it with facts. And so this is a data-driven presentation. All of the data that you're going to hear tonight came from Athens-Clarke County. So this isn't third-party pre-cooked stuff from Omaha. This is all information that came from our departments about how our community operates. So it tells a story about us. And we felt that that was important. We want to use data more. We want to use data appropriately. We want to be able to make smart decisions based off of reality. And as we are learning more and more about economic realities of running a government, of running a business, of running our homes, our ability to kind of relax financially is going away. Fair? So as we look towards the next 20 years, our land is, as you'll see, our commodity. Our land is what drives this community in many ways. It makes it possible for us to live the way we want to live. And we need to use it as a precious resource that it is. And so as we wrap towards the last third of our future land use planning exercise that's been going on since 2023, and we're looking towards the fall of this year to have a map that we're going to take through the Planning Commission and up to the County Commission for consideration and hopefully adoption, we want the discussion to include facts, data that stretch into the economics and not just about engineering, not just about land use and permitting and how are we going to accommodate what we think would be 30,000 people over the next 20 years. That's all good, and we think that's data that's worth talking about. There's a financial side to this. So the focus of this effort is to think about land use and to think about it in a new way. And what we want to do is have this be a starting point so that we don't have this discussion once. This isn't a one-off. But we want our community to make decisions using these metrics, these ideas, every single time. So that might mean with rezones in the future, we may have a way that we gauge its impact on our digest, our tax digest. We don't do that now, but we can. So that may be something that we're taking a look at. We may be looking at our budgeting process to take a closer look at land use and zoning and valuation than it presently does. That's totally appropriate. That's us leveling up because our community is maturing and the issues that we deal with are maturing also. So we need to take our game to that level. So with that, I'm going to introduce Joe, and he's going to make a presentation. I would encourage you to think about your questions because we will make time for your questions towards the end. All right? Thank you very much for being here.
Great. Thank you. And thanks to the tech crew for helping make this work. This is a massive surgery that just happened here. It was kind of awesome. I'm going to talk about a lot of nerdy stuff through this evening about taxation, about the economics of cities. We're sort of known for these three-dimensional models of how a tax flow operates. But what you're seeing here is a model of Auckland, New Zealand. And think of it as a bar chart put on a map. That's basically what it is. Those buildings aren't that tall here. That's their downtown, but that's showing the productivity of the taxes that come off of it. So when I show these images, think you're just seeing a bar chart spread around a landscape. Also, I think you all owe me a massive apology because I went to the University of Miami during the Jimmy Johnson era, and we ended up with Carson Beck. And somehow, he hasn't even played a game, but somehow he lost his girlfriend over the last month. So I'm looking forward to this year's season in football. Actually, I'm not. Sorry. But anyway, I'm going to give you all a quick little test. Some of you all seen me do this presentation before. Don't shout out the answers. But for those of you that haven't seen this, it's a really quick test of, it's a math test, basically. If you could tell me, I'll give you 5 seconds to tell me how many shapes you see in this kid's puzzle. So you got 5 seconds. Ready, go. 5 seconds feels like a long time, right? Can y'all tell me how many shapes you saw? 10? You can shout it out. No one's going to fail, so just... 20. A lot isn't a number. 20? Anybody want to go higher than 20? What time was it on the clock? How many kids did you see on the school bus? What I've just done with you is I've messed with your brain. Our brains have two modes of thinking. We have a fast mode and a slow mode. I put you into fast mode by giving you a question. We're very efficient at eliminating information. You went looking for shapes. You didn't see the, 5 kids on the school bus. You didn't see that it was 10 after 10 because I turned that part of your brain off. What I'm going to do to you tonight is basically ask a different question. I'm going to show you information that's hiding in plain sight. It's all data that you all have. But frequently, we ask the wrong questions when we go into city commission meetings, when we talk about city planning, when we talk about how growth happens. We go in predisposed with questions and we miss a ton of data. So that's it. That's the magic of what you're about to see. Who's been to Asheville? Cool. Oh, thank you. Thanks for coming and eating our food and drinking our beer. This is Asheville from the 1980s. You know, not so great. 1990s. We essentially gave up our downtown in the 1930. We became the highest per capita debt of the entire United States. We were number 1 in debt, and we essentially, oh, thank you. We essentially mothballed ourselves for 50 years to pay off that debt. It took us until 1976 to pay off that debt, but we essentially gave up on our city. We weren't urban. We're rural mountain people. No one's going to bother with this downtown. I ended up working for this guy's company, Julian Price. Julian inherited $15 million, and he put money into a for-profit real estate development company called Public Interest Projects. 75% of our money, we fixed buildings. 25%, we started businesses. So we started the Orange Peel, if y'all came to see our music there. And then our time was the direct opposite. We spent most of our time with entrepreneurs. Once you fix a building, it's sort of on its own. You're going to maintain it, but it doesn't do weird things that a business may do. But this is one of our buildings before and after. This is Malaprop's bookstore. We cultivated them. That's a different entrepreneur. But it's all about making downtown work. And what we found ourselves doing was constantly communicating with the citizens in our community about why does it matter to build community wealth? How do you build entrepreneurs, invest in businesses, and grow your community? What I kind of sense out of all of this is we sort of lost this ability to have civic conversations. This is a kid's book that I found in a garage sale. It's called The City, the Town, and the Country. This is the teacher's guide. You've got city, town, country. In the book, this is it. In the first grade, you learn about your house, kindergarten, your house. First grade, the school. Second grade, the neighborhood. Third grade, you learn about the city, the town, and the region. So you're learning about the regional planning in third grade. Did you all do that? 1959, third grade textbook, right? So this is the book. Your county is a joint city-county government, but to the most part, counties are responsible for education, welfare, environmental regulation. In studying the functions performed by your county, you no doubt find there's a duplication of services, an overlapping of jurisdictions, and a lack of coordination between the county and the communities within it. That we have a sort of a hostile relationship with our county in Asheville where there's sort of disconnection, and we see this all the time. This is 1959, it still happens today. Here's one of the lesson plans. It's one of those Dick and Jane kind of looking books. Painfully white. It's also super misogynistic. The girls are shoved out in the hallway for some reason. But you read about a new factory gets built, there's even more kids that go to school, and you see the overcrowding, right? So in blue right here, this is what you ask your third graders. Remember, you're the teacher. Give 4 good reasons for building a new school. And your kids talk about what? Equity. Everybody should have a desk, right? Let's get all the kids in the classroom. Let's get another teacher and split the class in two so we have a better ratio of students to teachers. This is third graders. On the right here, you learn about Mr. Canfield, who lived next door to the Allens. He didn't want a new school. He says our taxes are too high. If we build a new school, we'll need more teachers and we'll have to pay still higher taxes. So in blue, this is what you ask your third graders. Why would some people have to pay higher taxes, and why are some people against paying higher taxes? Third graders. Third graders are learning about the needs of a community and why you have to pay for stuff. I know adults that can't have this conversation right now. It's like this is something we need to understand. We're all in this together. As a community, you have to grow, and you have to grow together, and things cost money. So this is, again, back to the teacher. Remember, too, that many children, whether urban and rural and regardless of region, are tragically limited in their knowledge of their world, and their world is largely the space in which they live and operate. Having an understanding of this tragic limitation is key to this presentation. You need to understand how this whole corporation called Athens-Clarke County has to work, the cost of this school, the cost of this equipment. And I think you all need to vote for getting a new computer projector. I'm gonna make that lobby now. You're in it together. If you look up the word incorporate in the Oxford American Dictionary, it says constitute a company, a city, or other organization as a legal corporation. By law, Athens-Clarke County is incorporated, right? The state of Georgia is incorporated. The United States is incorporated. Joe Biden said this on the Stephen Colbert Show. The United States is the largest corporation in the world. I'm such a nerd. This is it right here. That's the US code that lists us as a federal corporation. We're not a capitalist corporation. We are a social corporation. We're all in this together. We are all on the hook for the cost of those roads outside and the cost of this school. So my city is worth $14 billion, which is 7 times the value of Ted Turner. Did y'all know that? Like, what's the value of Athens-Clarke County? 18 billion. So do I think that Ted Turner is going to make all of his decisions based off looking at Facebook and seeing who's complaining? Of course not. So why am I doing that as a community? So my city, by the way, my city is the only city in North Carolina that's not allowed to annex land. My state made that illegal. So those acres are all that we have. That's our commodity, is that land, right? So when farmers talk about land, they're talking about it as a product. What's the crop yield per acre, the labor per acre, the water per acre. This is one of our crops. So we renovated this building. We wouldn't have done it if the city didn't do the streetscape project. So thank you, city. Thanks for the garbage can, the bike rack, 2 benches, and a street tree. That's super awesome. People accused us of being subsidized because the city did that. They're like, you didn't pay for that. And I was like, no, we didn't. The whole world can walk on it, but fine. We took the taxable value, put in retail, office, residential. Taxable value went from 300,000 to 11 million. So that means it's 3,500% increase in taxes. That's what you get. Go out and buy 3,500% more garbage cans. I don't care. This is how we build our community's wealth, right? And again, people have biases. They're like, well, that's $11 million. This Walmart over here is 20 million. So that number is double that, right? Y'all see that? Well, it also took 34 acres of my farm to make that happen versus 0.2 acres for that. So when you look at the total value, you're missing the productivity. Taxes per acre, which is that, this is showing you the productivity difference between our building and their building. So who would have thought that a furniture store, a beauty salon, and a tattoo shop is kicking out that with this building on top of it? Oh, sales tax, double the sales tax. Obviously more residents and more jobs. This isn't to slam Walmart. This is to get you to see that it's easier for me to do that than this. I'm going to be paying you less taxes to do that than this, right? Those are the numbers. So I just went through this pretty fast. It's not complex math that I'm doing here. I don't have a finance degree. I'm actually trained as an architect. It's like I'd like to draw pictures. Well, what I'm showing you is the economics of how we measure things. So think of it this way. Imagine if I were out in the lobby and I said my truck gets 650 miles per tank. You'd laugh at me. And you'd say, Joe, that's kind of silly. All tanks are different sizes. We don't say miles per tank. We say miles per gallon. And the numbers should change. And we should all be driving BMW Asettas. Sorry to the Prius owners, but that's more efficient, right? We understand efficiency per gallon. Why aren't we looking at the acre the same way? Sorry to the Prius owners. By the way, that's a very dangerous little car right there. If you have a head-on collision, that's your door. You're stuck in it. Anyway, it's a cute car. So looking at the data that we have, for every dollar of taxes somebody pays to the county in single family, in county property taxes, their brother or sister in the city is paying about 5 times that to the county. Here's the Walmart, the mall, a 2-story building, 3-story building, and 6-story buildings. This is all under the high-rise code. 6 stories is top here. But you see, as you stack your stories, the money kind of takes off. As you mix your uses, it gets more potent. Also, when I first started doing this stuff, people are like, you just hate Walmart. Why are you picking on Walmart? Because now I'm on my 3rd Walmart here. Just to let you know, I presented at the International Association of Tax Assessing Officers Conference. Is there an assessor in the room? 2? Anybody hang out with like 3,000 assessors? It makes a planning conference feel like Burning Man. It's like the squarest conference ever. In a good way. They're massive nerds. This guy got up at 8 in the morning and did this crazy presentation on how cheap Walmarts are. Let that wash over you for a second. I'm in the back of the room watching this. It's really brilliant from his perspective. He's going to help get his value down in one meeting. And the assessor's credit, they just want data, right? So they're like, thank you very much. Thanks for these spreadsheets. This is super awesome. Now we know what's going on. We can understand your business. Cool. That's their job. They're doing their job. I went up to the microphone and I said, Mr. Terrell, what's the useful life of one of your buildings? How long do they last? And he honestly shot back. He goes, 15, 20 years. We're designing the building to depreciate it down again. We don't care about the building. It's throwaway. We would care more about the transportation infrastructure. The buildings are essentially, we'll just move around, and it's meaningless to us. We want to maximize depreciation. Don't hate the player, hate the game. But you better understand the game. The assessors have rules. He's following the rules. The assessors are following their rules. Are these the rules that are good for you? Is that 15-year life cycle good enough for your corporation? That's the life cycle of a cat, right? I'm a dog person, sorry to cat people. But this is the commitment to your corporation. Is that long enough for you? Is that what you want? If it is, cool. Just make sure you're documenting this. Sorry about the cat. I would say people don't see this is because some of it's how it's communicated, how we talk about information, the habits that we have. So in our firm, we try to specialize, Brooke's here, hey Brooke. We try to specialize in how we visualize the information. So if I can go to the doctor and get a CAT scan of my brain, and my creative thought process is the green stuff, and my brainstem activity is the blue stuff, I can see what's going on in my head. Can we do this for your place? So this is my county, and we did this back in 2014 because my county, or my state representative called our city a cesspool of sin. Like, what do you do when your state representative says that to you? It's like, dude, but here's the deal. You're a joint city-county government. We're a city-county government. It's different. I've got 2 voters out in the county for every 1 voter in the city. So it's perfectly fine. He's just counting the votes. Those folks hate the city, even though, guess what? I'm a county taxpayer, right? So here's my county, 600 square miles. This is Mount Mitchell Federal Park. It's non-taxable. So just to be crude about it, it's not paying any taxes. I don't care about it. This is Mount Pisgah, non-taxable. Blue Ridge Parkway comes through town. Green is low value. This is Big Ivy up here, super low value. As you get up to purple, this is the Biltmore Estate. That one property right there is worth $100 million. That's the largest house in America. When the Cecils show up at one of our council meetings, we all genuflect and thank them for their time. They're super powerful. But come on, who's got a 180,000 square foot house? Anybody? Sitting on 8,000 acres? They've got the biggest gas tank. So rather than total value, here's value per acre. And here it is in 3D. Anybody want to guess where downtown is? So I pointed this out at the meeting, the State of the Downtown address, and I asked the chair of the county commission, I said, Mr. Gant, where's downtown? And he goes, the big purple thing. I'm like, yep, that's it. We don't have skyscrapers that big. Again, this is just a bar chart. But that's the potency of our downtown. We can also see our little cousin, the Black Mountain over here. If y'all have been to Black Mountain, the tallest building's 3 stories. And you can see it popping up right here. We can also see the sprawl of our south side not really producing anything. So folks that live out here in Fairview who think they're paying a lot of taxes, and in their defense, they are compared to people out here in Hickory Nut Gap. They have no idea what we're paying in county taxes in the downtown. So just show them the information, right? So bumping over to y'all, I'm not going to go through the full tax system. I did a very nerdy presentation last night. That's on tape, but I'm just going to shortcut it a little bit. These are how all the different states operate. Blue is property taxes, yellow is sales taxes, black is like state transfers and stuff like that. If you're in Pennsylvania, there's some income tax at a local level. Y'all don't have that. But you're mostly run off property tax. As you get to this, as you go to this end of the ledger over here, these states are mostly 100% property tax, no sales tax, nothing like that. If you're over here in Arkansas, Alabama, and District of Columbia, they're mostly sales tax, which is kind of crazy. What happens in a recession? You don't buy a boat, you're not buying a TV, you're not buying a car. All of a sudden you can't afford your city. What we've seen in the last recession, what we'll see in the next recession, these states are gonna really get hammered. So you guys are in good shape. It's like a balance here. So your tax system in Georgia, in North Carolina, we don't have an exemption. You take 40% of value is what you pay tax on, but your tax bill, 60 cents for every dollar that you put into your taxes goes to the school system. The other 40 cents goes to running your community. This is how it looks for commercial, residential, and then residential with the homestead. This is your sales tax discount or credit that comes off the top. You'll notice that commercial gets more credit than residential homestead because these are considered commercial product, basically. But that gets taken off the top, and this is the tax bill on $300,000 of value for each of these buckets. So this is the discount that you get for your homeowner exemption. A renter is essentially going to be paying more taxes because the presumption is that tax bill is being made to the commercial property owner. Well, what do you think the commercial property owner is just going to pay the tax bill out of their good will? Of course not. They're going to fold that cost into the cost of rent. So just, that's a quirk of your state tax system. So the other thing is, y'all, you voted for this last year. Prop 13, you did an assessment cap. The first one in the United States was in 1978 in California, and it sort of spread across the country ever since. Florida is probably one of the worst ones. I'm going to show you that one in a second, but you guys have like a baby version of Florida going on here, and you did this last year. So basically what happens is the value over time gets capped, and you get a little discount, which feels good as you're going over time. This is the amount of money that's not going to your local government. Does that make sense? Which is great. You get to keep more of your money, but you still have to pay for all that infrastructure. So that's a trade-off. So let me just show you how it gets really bad. I love Florida. Florida caps their commercial growth at 10% and their residential growth at 3% or CPI. You guys aren't this crazy, but what they did is they locked it in as this weird kind of formula, but they also let commercial go 3 times greater than what they do residential. There's this bias that we have toward commercial property where we want to get our money from somewhere, we just don't want it to come from me, right? There's an old colonial barb, don't tax me, don't tax thee, tax the fella behind the tree. Seriously. It's attributed to Huey Long in Louisiana, but it actually goes back to us being colonists. We are essentially tax evaders. Remember what happened when we didn't like our tax on our tea? You know, started a war over it. But this is what happened in Brevard County, Florida. So we've got this gap here. This is what's going on with the market. Kind of takes off before the recession and the recession craters. This is what's going on with the assessed value. So if you're sitting in your house and you know that your value is way up here, but you're being taxed down here, that's pretty cool. But then the recession hits and it craters and kind of comes back out. But notice how when it comes out for the valuation, you have a slower growth because you're restricted the growth on that cap, right? It can only grow so much. Okay, let me ask you a question. The price that you have to pay for this projector for the school, the police car, the computer at City Hall, is it following the blue line or is it following the red line? Following the blue line. The unfortunate thing about caps is they're actually very detrimental to government going forward because it restricts the ability for government to keep up with itself when growth happens. It also induces you to want to have more people grow into your community so you can pay for the things that you have. Does that make sense? Do y'all follow me? So that's kind of their weird perversity to it. That's why you see a lot of growth in Florida, because they can't carry the cost of the stuff they have. They have to get more people to move in. So their cap rate in 2022, the inflation was 7%, and they were like, that's too high. We're going to cap it down to 3%. Remember, that's their restriction. So here's what's going on with the price of asphalt. In the last 5 years, it's gone up 5% a year, which is greater than 3. But here's the kicker. From 2021 to 2022, the growth of asphalt, according to the Federal Reserve, went up 29%. In 1 year, asphalt went up 29%. Does the laws of your stuff that you have to buy follow any cap that you put in place? No. What I love about this little bit right here, I was living in Florida. I was a recent college graduate, and I voted for this tax cap. Sorry, Florida. It felt good to me. I was a renter. It didn't even benefit me, and I voted for it. We're kind of illiterate in how these policies work and what their consequences are. So now you know. Here's your budget. You have, Brooke made these charts. This is where your money comes from. This is where it goes to. Actually, Brooke made this whole show, so thank you, Brooke. So this is your... Brooke's a massive nerd, and she lives in Atlanta, and so she came into the show. Thanks, Brooke. So we're going to put what we can on the ground, your sales tax and your property taxes. We're going to put those on a map. This is another way of looking at it. This is called a Sankey chart, or we call it a butterfly chart. But basically, this is the same thing as those two pie charts. Here's where your money comes in. It goes into a big bucket called the general fund, and then this is what goes out and gets spent, right? It goes from public safety down to capital outlays for physical stuff or debt service. But that's the stuff we're going to map, is the property taxes and sales taxes. So here's your county in total value. So miles per tank. You can see the big parcels are super valuable. This is miles per gallon here. So value per acre. You see the heat shift to the center. Here it is in 3D. Your downtown is ridiculously potent. You have a very strong downtown, and you can see it in the model right here, as well as some other areas we'll get into. And then here's UGA kind of sliding in here as the campus. So your downtown is about 0.2% of the whole county's area is a physical footprint. Financially, it's producing 8% of your property taxes. So think of it this way. Physical footprint, financial footprint. What's the ratio of 0.2 to 8? Well, you divide one number into the other. It's 1 to 39 is a ratio of productivity. My downtown is a 1 to 9, and that is really good. Your downtown is way more potent than my downtown. A good downtown is like 1 to 6. So that's carrying a lot of the revenue for your whole community. This is your golden goose, basically, right there. Now, you can look at this model, and you can ask yourself, from a planning exercise, how do we grow these little areas that are down here? How do we fix the missing teeth that are in here? There are lots of things you can do once you see this kind of CAT scan. Your downtown is 56% non-taxable. You all know you're a college town. You also have churches, city buildings, or municipal buildings. That's stuff that's non-taxable. This is your most fertile garden. You want to also be sure that you're being disciplined with your non-taxable real estate. Does that make sense? So looking county-wide, you're at about 17% non-taxable. These parcels here are your Economic Development Authority parcels. That's about 1%. And we went ahead and ran UGA. It's about 6% of the non-taxable. Just to put it in perspective, the worst we've seen is Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where it's 65% non-taxable because of the university. So you all aren't the worst. We also went ahead and grabbed some SEC communities. So here's Lexington's downtown, Gainesville's downtown, and y'all's, and then the cities. Incidentally, here's the University of Florida. This is their city. They're 61 square miles, and y'all are 116. So you're a county. Georgia has tiny, tiny little counties compared to a lot of places. To put that in perspective, this is the city of Lexington and Fayette County at 284. So they're double the size of y'all. There's no magic number to the non-taxable. You'll see that in Gainesville, they have a lot of wetlands over here and here that are non-taxable. They have a greenway that goes through the whole city. So there's no magic number. It's just something to pay attention to as a metric. So this is one of my favorite examples of some of the oddity that's in the assessment system. This is in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and there are no buildings in this image. This is just land value per acre. So we can go into the computer and just turn off buildings and just look at the land per acre. If you look up here and under the label, you can see that everybody's blue, all the properties are the same color. That seems reasonable. It's all the same neighborhood. When you look over here, you start to see some different things going on. That's usually let's have a conversation with the assessor. Is it the CAMA model? Did something happen? CAMA is computer automated mass appraisal. It's basically the big Excel spreadsheet that runs your assessment system. Is there something in that that's happening? Is it policy? Is it zoning? But when I was presenting, I pointed out this property here. This is the mall, but again, the mall's not there, it's just the dirt. This is $15,000 an acre, and when you cross the street in the same zoning category, it doubles to $40,000. I pointed this out because there's a standard that the assessors have. So sure enough, I was like asking the question, why is this 15,000 and that's 40,000, same zoning category? The assessor was sitting in the front row. She raised her hand and she just yelled out, "You don't understand." And I'm like, what am I missing? And she goes, well, they have more land. The more land you have, the less people in the marketplace that can buy that piece of parcel. So we have to give it a discount because there's less people that can compete to get that land. And it's just a supply and demand thing. We've got to give it a less value. Okay. The mayor started laughing, by the way. And I was like, so I've got 3 miles of street around this property. This fella's got 250 feet. And she goes, we don't care about the infrastructure. That's not part of the valuation. It all has to do with comps that we have in the system and who's paid for what. In her defense, that's the rules, right? So you don't want any of your money back that you put into the dirt. And she's like, well, that's not our standard. So the reason why I was at the assessors conference, and by the way, their magazine is called Fair and Equitable. I presented this to them and I said, how is this fair and how is it equitable? Right? If I have more land, chances are I have deeper pockets to be able to buy it and you're giving me a discount, right? That's not fair. To their credit, they're like, no, that's not fair. And I'm like, okay, where'd this standard come from? Did Moses give it to you? Can you show me where it is? And they, by the way, this kills them at the assessors conference. And they're like, no, seriously, you got to go talk to Larry. So I tracked this guy, Larry, down. Larry Clarke, there he is. I'm wearing the same suit. And I showed this to Larry. Larry's awesome. And he's like, yeah, that's not fair. You know, now that you pointed out that way, we never really thought about it that way. It's probably something that comes from England. It's part of agricultural policy, and we just didn't really think through how it affects the marketplace within a commercial real estate, but yeah, we probably need to change that. It'll just take a while to get through the system. There it is. Y'all just have to find Larry, right? And then he can pull that lever. I'm joking. This is a conversation that they're having in the assessors organization because we've allowed these standards to be there, and we're not thinking through. Now, the real estate industry's figured it out. And they're maximizing their dollar. You just have to do it in your community. So here's your land value model, just dirt, land value per acre, no buildings in here. The most potent dirt in your entire community is sitting under that building from a valuation standpoint, according to that analytic. So just running through some examples of this, it's just, you can actually, it's actually really cool to look at these because you can tell where the commercial corridors are in the model and where the commercial properties are versus residential. So this is the downtown, average about 2.4 million for dirt, northeast about 176, Boulevard neighborhood about 390. I'm just going to go through normal town. These are all just different areas. I'm going to roll up in the back of this so you can see all of it. But again, commercial corridor, you can see that. Some quirks, like this is a condo building that is probably got adjacent property that it should be tied to. Very consistent along there. So here you are from these neighborhoods. You all know these neighborhoods better than I do. But a couple of them that we wanted to look at was the northeast of downtown versus southwest Athens, down by the river down here, and just comparing them. So we have Lumpkin and Westlake are kind of the boundaries versus the river, and then North Avenue over here. So the parcel size, a little bit bigger parcel here at about 1/8 of an acre versus 1/6 of an acre. This is the average value per acre of the dirt. 800,000 versus 1.2 million. So, total value. the value of the dirt is 171 to 176. So this neighborhood is more potent in total value and land value. Y'all follow me? Knowing those two neighborhoods, would you think this? Data. Look at the data, have a conversation, and talk about this. So land use types. Okay, we have this histogram that's sort of a rainbow color that goes from non-taxable to purple, green to purple. So we couldn't resist playing with you all. So we're gonna go ahead and use our reds, the top 3 tiers. We're gonna start with UGA and then go to Vince Dooley Camellias coming in at number 2. And we couldn't resist a jumping Kirby for the purple ones. So we're gonna go ahead and tag some of these buildings. But here's your Walmarts. Your Walmarts are averaging about $500,000. I'm gonna go ahead and leave that down there as we walk through your buildings. But that's your average for a Walmart. Your residential properties, you have in those planning documents out there in the lexicon of how you guys talk about these, you have low density, and then you have this missing middle stuff in here, which is sort of duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, townhouses, and then you get into high density. A lot of communities don't have the rich architecture types that you guys have, and you know that about your community. So it's really kind of cool to go through these. Here's your single family low density stuff. Runs anywhere from 200,000 to 3.2 million along this span. I'm gonna go real fast through these, so you will have a PDF copy of this when I'm done. This is missing middle stuff, starting at 2.2, going up to about 8 million an acre for these townhouses. That one gets a bulldog. This one gets a bulldog at 6 million and down at 2 million over Lumpkin Crossing. So you're starting to see as multifamily is becoming more potent as you go up. And then here's the big kahunas. These are some high density multifamily coming in at 34 and 38. So these two get some Kirby's for their performance. So just to make it a bar chart, single families averaging about 500,000, missing middles coming in at 2.6 million per acre, and your multifamily high density is coming in at close to 10. That's the potency of those residential types. To give you a closer look in here, this property right here versus this one, here's your downtown over here. This is on Linden Street, and we also grabbed Kirby Smart's house. I know this is like putting my neck out a little bit in your community, but he's selling his house, so we couldn't resist. So there's his house at 1.6 million an acre of value. This property is 8 million an acre. So let's look at them again. This one takes up 1/10 of an acre. His takes up 2 acres. The total market value is 600,000, 640 versus 3.1 million. Hopefully he can get his $4 million that he's asking for. But the market value per acre is that versus this. When you drive by these little houses, basically here's another thing. Not only is there an incentive for me to build cheap buildings in your community, there's also an incentive for me to blow through a lot of your real estate. The more the land is in my parcel, the more it dilutes the value and the value potential. Conversely, the folks that are on little baby footprints are highly potent, right? So, sorry, Kirby. And just to show you that I'm not so mean, we just went ahead and grabbed Nick Saban's property because Nick actually has a house in Georgia. Do y'all know that? He's got a lake house, and here it is. It's kind of phenomenal. 2 million an acre. It's actually less productive than the Linden house. It's about the productivity of Kirby's house, this massive thing with its own boat garage. But anyway, Nick actually sold that house and he bought this house in Florida. We do our research in Urban3. If you want his address to mail him a love letter, we've got it for you. It's right on the border of Palm Beach and Martin County. Spans a road. He's got a dock house and an oceanfront house. Bought it for $17 million. It's $0.9 million an acre. So that's actually pretty good. But it's got a phenomenal view. Anyway, sorry. Couldn't resist that joke. Your mall is about $300,000 an acre. By comparison, the Beechwood Shopping Center is $1.9 million an acre. And Tomorrow Tattoo is $10 million an acre. The smaller the buildings, you're getting some real potency out of them. Earth Fair is $1.4 million. And then these guys right here, this is on Main Street. again, 2 and 1 story buildings, 15 million, 21 million, 20 million, 26, 24. High potency that's been producing wealth for generations in your community. Now let's get into mixed use. When you start to add different uses together, 21 million, these are all camellias, by the way. 15 million, 11 million. Now we're hitting some Kirby's at 42 million, 37 million, 40 million, 26 million, 43 million, 54. I mean, do y'all see a pattern here? That density is super, super potent. But the most potent building in your entire community, the top of your model, is going to be this building, coming in at 68 million an acre. So that gets a big Kirby jump on it there. So here's the roll up: commercial low density, commercial Main Street typology, and mixed use stuff as a bar chart. So since we got into the downtown, let's talk about your lasting value. I mean, some of these buildings are just, they're ridiculously old, and this isn't the first life that they're living, and they're producing 14 million an acre for that one. This one here, not only is it valuable at 33 million, but what's the cultural significance of that building? What shows did you see there? What memories did you produce? So it's not only doing that for you, it's also producing wealth in your community. So it's adding social and financial value to your community. This one here, where you had horse technology. These people had horses and they built that thing, right? 1908, there it is, at 43 million an acre. And you just have this phenomenal, I mean, we actually have a ton of slides of this. We couldn't resist, and we just kept on making them because you have this incredible architecture in your community, 35 million, 45, 37, 21. So you just can't stop in your community with this. Critters Pub coming in at 16 million an acre. And then that's the tall building right there. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but basically these are your averages in your community, and then these are your historic buildings. So there's a value in your historic preservation in your community. So just to kind of go into a little drill into 5 Points in Normaltown, y'all know these places. What's cool about them is, we can recommend do some more buildings in your downtown. That's kind of easy, right, to grow your downtown up. But how do you grow your community outward? How do you fix and repair and grow your own wealth? Well, these are actually two great examples of commercial areas that actually coexist with residential areas around it, and they actually suffer a lack of parking. But where they benefit is people can actually walk to those restaurants and bars and whatnot, so they can stay in business. But check this out, 2 million, 2 million, 3 million. This is 10 times the value of them all right there. And again, not big buildings. Don't think of your future growth as something that you have to have big buildings to have big impact. Little buildings do it. $7 million right here. And check this one out. This little one-story building is 9 million versus that at 7 million. So there's a lot of potency as you look around. And 5 Points, same deal, same thing, 3 million, 2 million, 2 million, 2 million, very potent. Not so much parking. So there's trade-offs, right? You don't have all the parking, but you're getting a lot of potency in these areas, and so a lot of diversity in the businesses, a lot of opportunity in your community. And then this is one of my favorites, the independent baking next to Slater's. So 11 million versus 9 million. Well, this one's less because it has a little bit of parking on the side of it, so that parking actually dilutes the value. Does that all make sense? As you ask for more parking, you're actually working against your economic interests. It may be more efficient for you. It may be something that it's easier to park, but there's a trade-off. All of these things are trade-offs. So productivity comes from density. And then also, we went ahead and compared 5 properties on East Broad Street compared to Walmart. So this is $6.2 million for those 5 properties. The Walmart is that big. So this is the footprint of those buildings. This is at the same scale. The footprint of Walmart is a parcel, also 6.2 million. So basically those 2 properties are equal. Y'all follow me there? Financially, this is your farm. What kind of revenue do you want to get out of it? Incidentally, lots of times people are like, well, Joe, we get cheaper goods out of Walmart. We get the toilet paper is cheaper. It's like, well, it is. But are you aware that like the average Walmart consumes more in police services than it pays in property taxes? What's the cost of the stoplight that's in front of the Walmart? The road that is to get out there? These are all trade-offs, right? So also parking reduces productivity in addition to density. This is a chart of your whole county as a square. So if you're just to take all the land area, this is your buildings, your roads, and your parking, and this is everything else. We were having a conversation about this, and I said to Bruce and Mark, I was like, this is kind of crazy. You actually have you have 8.4 square miles of parking. That's insane. Notice that you have more land dedicated to parking than buildings. Y'all are 129,000 people. This is Eugene, Oregon. 170,000 people. They're sitting on 35 square miles. They actually have more land in buildings than parking. They actually have more land in roads than parking. Now, it's not like it's hard to find parking in Eugene, Oregon, and it's not like I'm using a European example here. So again, y'all, this is your opportunity right here. Can you find parking lots to rebuild into something and take them from no value higher up? Can you look at your zoning code and see the standards that you have for parking? Why require so much? Just think this stuff through. So back to your buildings, I call this the Brady Bunch slide because we have residential low density to high density, commercial low, medium, and high, mixed use low, medium, and high, and these are their numbers. It's hard to see it this way. Let's just turn it into a bar chart. So you can see that the commercial and mixed use stuff is way more potent than the residential stuff. And again, this isn't to vilify residential. Go ahead and do more of it, but make sure you're doing some of this to compensate for the low productivity of that. Does that all make sense? I'm not going to say, look, everybody go move into a townhouse. That's kind of crazy. Some of you might want that. So this is just kind of rolling up where they are in the model as a bar chart. Again, I'm going to keep on beating that drum. This is just a bar chart of buildings. These aren't skyscrapers going on here. Your zoning analysis, this is your zoning map. This is fairly nerdy to get into. They're all out in the lobby out there. But basically, these are the different footprints of agriculture, single family, industrial, commercial, and mixed use. You don't have that much mixed use. About 4% of your city is mixed use. This is how it works out financially. So just let your eye wander over this. This is the footprint of agriculture. That's how much the value it produces. So it actually goes down in value, which is fine. Because an ear of corn doesn't call the police, it doesn't go to school. Agricultural lands also get a discount from a taxation perspective. So it's going to have less value, fine. But let's look at single family, mixed use, and commercial, and kind of see how they rank up. This is kind of a good way to see it. This is its physical footprint. This is its financial footprint. So to take that number and divide it into this, it's a 1.6 times growth from footprint to financial footprint. This one goes from 6 to 24, well, that's a 4. And then this one goes from 4 to 21, that's a, come on now, 5.3 times growth. You get a lot of potency off a little footprint. Does that all make sense? We did do your sales tax. By the way, just so you know, what I'm about to show you is illegal in the state of North Carolina. I can't see any of the sales tax data in my state, which is kind of wild. Green means we can get it. So we can, in Colorado or California, I can get what Susan's barber shop is making versus Bill's boutique, I can get that there. I can't get it in your state. Your state, we're restricted. We can see some of the data, but we have to estimate some of it. So these models are as best as we can do. Oh, by the way, in addition to these progressive places, there's also ultra-progressive South Carolina, where we can get the data, just so you know. I like to remind people in North Carolina that South Carolina gives us the data. They don't like that, but whatever. So here's your sales taxes. You've got your SPLOS, and this is your regular sales tax. We're going to put those on a map. So here they are. And you can tell, this is where your downtown is that's killing it. And then you have your commercial corridors or some spots where there's transactions and sales tax production. But that's what we have on the map, that 20%. And here's what's producing things. So this is the best that we can do. And then layering the property tax on top of the sales tax. And let's just kind of zoom into the model here. So here's the Olive Garden. You can see it's sales tax and then the little bit of property tax on top of it. This is the apartments at the Athens apartments. No sales tax, it's just all property tax. So it's actually not doing bad. Here's the Chili's Bar and Grill. A little bit of property tax, a lot of sales tax. And then here's the Slater Steakhouse over here. It's hard to see the property tax right there, so let me just kind of highlight that. Also, I'm sorry, I'm Italian. I was sort of offended by your Olive Garden. I'm like, seriously? Come on, y'all, get some Italian food. But anyway, here's the sales tax of Slater's, here's the property tax. So let's go ahead and compare that to Olive Garden. It dwarfs Olive Garden. So Olive Garden is happening and having those transactions because you can get a lot of free, limitless breadsticks or whatever for the college kids. I got that, but Slater's is crushing it. Anyway, sorry, that's a personal thing. I couldn't resist the Olive Garden. Walmart, this is the sales tax versus the total sales tax revenue. Walmart's crushing it at $4 million of sales tax production. These buildings are producing $400,000 a year, but again, look at the footprint difference. This is the sales taxes per acre versus Walmart, and then the property tax per acre. Again, just look at this apples to apples from a production standpoint down here. So in Colorado, we could get the actual data. So we actually compared Peter's bookstore with Tim's coffee shop against the Walmart. So two Main Street shops, and I want to go through this just so you know the details of what you should be talking about in your community. And again, it's all going to be pretty consistent. Here's the property taxes of Walmart versus the coffee shop and bookstore. This is the retail taxes. So they're producing, what is that, 4 times the property tax, or sales taxes, 15 times the property taxes, and then here are the jobs. So the question to ask yourself, like, these are clearly producing more economic production for your community. Whose retail sector employee is getting paid more per hour? The Walmart or these businesses? It's probably going to be these businesses. It's going to be a nickel or a dime more. It's not going to be huge, but it's going to be a little bit more. Now let's ask the next economic question. Which business is hiring the local attorney, the local ad executive, the local accountant? Is it going to be this side of the ledger or that side of the ledger? It's going to be the blue side. When we miss the power of our local entrepreneurs and our independent businesses, we're missing how to build wealth in our community. And again, this isn't to vilify Walmart. This is because this is how they've made their money, by being efficient at a national level. But that doesn't help you locally. So just so you know. So, okay. Let me see, how are we doing on time? I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to fly through this section. This is the growth of your city over time. And you started growing your area out. Here you are by 1874. And then you crater because of the Civil War. You've lost a lot of people. And then you kind of come back in the early 1920s. And then kind of blow out the circle. Most Georgia cities start as little circles, and you guys kind of broke out the edge over here. And then you kind of flatline to World War II. By the end of World War II, you achieved the same density as 1865. And then y'all did this and kind of grew out to the whole county and consumed all of that land, about 87% of your area, or 105 square miles, and your density just craters. There's two different cities going on here, and we'll come back to that. But this is all spatial analysis you need to be aware of. This joke only works for certain people. Glad you got it. So the thing that we did as part of this project is I've shown you this is all the money, where it's coming from, but where does it go? This is a great quote from Jack Stack, who wrote a book called The Great Game of Business, and it's about transparency in business. You should be able to see what's going in, what's moving around, and what's coming out. The same is true of government. You all are owed this as citizens, as shareholders in your government. You should know where the money goes, right? So we're going to go ahead and map the expenditures of the physical stuff. That's your roads, your pipes. It's this stuff, water, sewer. That's what makes land active. Here's all of your stuff. So water, stormwater, sewer, transportation. Your land would be worth nothing until that road comes out there with that stuff, right? So what's the return on that investment? By the way, your stormwater will go from Athens to Spartanburg if you laid the pipes end to end. Your sewer will get you to Richmond, and your water pipes will go to New York City, and your roads will go to Portland, Maine. If I'm a developer and I build a road and give it to your community, that's your liability in perpetuity. You have to build that and rebuild that and rebuild that and rebuild that. Every 50 years, you're building a road to Portland. Did y'all get me on that? This is the liability that you have in your infrastructure. By the way, most finance departments in government list roads and pipes as assets. And when I talk to finance officers, I'm like, in my business, my computer, my van, and my building are assets. How are roads assets? They're liabilities, right? You can't pick up your roads and sell them to Gwinnett County, can you? No. So your roads, your pipes, your water tower, that's all stuff that you've got to keep on fixing. So when a road gets built, it's got a cycle, and it's basically every 10 years, you're going to be doing a resurfacing or preventative maintenance, 10, 10, 10, and then the 5th cycle, boom, that's the big expensive one. That's called a rebuild or reconstruction. You can nurse this out if you're paying for it. If you spend more time in your resurfacing and maintenance, you could nudge this out a couple decades. But there will come a time when you have to reconstruct, and then you get to start this all over again. This is the reality of the roads that we've been given and the heart attack that we're all going through. You're not the only city that's going through this, by the way. Roads last forever. You just have to think of them that way. So here's your roads. You're basically at an operational deficit. This is what you're putting in roads. This is what you should be putting in. This is what you are putting in. You're shorting your roads $21 million a year. You're shorting your water system a little bit less. You're doing better on your sewer system, but that's because you're spending a ton of money on your sewers right now. And then here's your stormwater system at about a $2 million deficit. So this is how that stacks up, and your overall deficit per year is $29 million. Ignoring that doesn't make it disappear, it just capitalizes the next year, right? So it gets worse over time. You have to have the discipline to keep this maintenance going. So what that would look like if you just want to just charge everybody the bill, it's basically $13 more a year per capita for transportation, $1 for stormwater. Water is about $3.50, and the sewer is going to be about 40 cents. If you want to meet that gap just by charging more. Now you could do it in other means. You could actually do more development in different areas that are more net positive. So here's your money on the map. Here's all the capital stack. And then we went ahead and did all the costs of the system. And again, the downtown's expensive. I got that, but it's also producing a lot of money. So this is pushing it all down in the ground as sunk costs. Here's the money sitting on top of the cost. So this is a side view of the model. Think of your whole city floating in a lake, and you could see the bottom of the boat as the sunk cost, and this is the money sticking out of the water, right? You pay this much in taxes. This is what it costs for that neighborhood to be there. This is the net position. This is the net deficit per year, and here's your whole city or county in 3D. You're actually not, this may seem scary. It's not the worst that we've seen. Lafayette, Louisiana, we were talking about this earlier. It's about $36 million in the hole. And most cities don't pencil things out this way. This is a new thing. Are we good? You guys look a little shocked. Are we okay? It's okay. You guys are doing okay. So this is the top of the model. 20% of your city are covering 80% of the losses. And this is the bottom view of the model, and you can see some ones sticking down there. So we just highlight a couple of the big expensive ones. The poultry processing facility is a big deficit for your community. Now there's a trade-off. It's producing a ton of jobs, right? So, but it takes a lot of infrastructure to let that thing sit where it sits. And it's not the most expensive buildings. They're big. Industrial buildings tend to be big, cheap boxes, basically. But that's the trade-off. You want the jobs. You want to diversify your income and not just be so dependent on a school. And then your big winners are these properties and their production above the model. So I'm wearing the same suit. It's a habit. We have to convert going from what we want to what we can handle, right? If you were to ask me what I want to be 6 foot tall and have a full head of hair. That would make me happy, right? Oh, I just want a pickleball court. You need to give me one of those. Kidding to the pickleball people. But we need to understand the growth of that infrastructure and its cost over time. So going back to the city and just kind of like going through those time periods, there's some interesting geospatial stuff here that basically you can see how you're above water until World War II, and then that model flips, right? Well, that's what we did to our cities. Post-World War II, we completely changed the way that we built cities. And there's a payoff to that. And if you pull back the literature post-World War II, A lot of it was racist. A lot of it was racist white flight that we fueled through different means, but we never talked about the long-term cost of changing our pattern. And if you find anything like that, please share it with me. But I've never seen anything. So a lot of American cities, that depends on the growth that you've done outside your ring. So splitting your city into the pre-45 city, it's not all awesome. There's some red spots in there, but it's net positive 13 million, and your post-World 45 city is the net negative one. Now you can fix this. You can do some improvements out there, but you have to measure those management. So one of the things that we did was some growth projections with your staff. And think of it as taking, spinning wheel of death, not cool. There we go. Think of making a cake with different, you can use the same ingredients to make different cakes, right? You can use sugar and flour and water and eggs. So let's just take the ingredients of your city and kind of mix it up a little bit. We worked on 5 different properties along the Firefly Trail with this different mix of ingredients. Willowwood Square and Shops of South Village, which is multifamily and retail, mix up those. These are mostly townhouses and duplexes. So here they are in the model. If you built those tomorrow, with how they would pop up, which is significant. And then we ran the costs on them as well. So here they all are. Again, these are all things we can share with you. This is a lot to go through in a show. And then here they are on the cost side. So you can actually net some positive growth, $3 million net positive of taxes out of those 7 properties. So $12 million deficit, less $3 million, gets you down to a $9 million deficit. You can do that with 7 projects, basically. Do you see how you can grow yourself out of that hole? So just to close, I usually close with a joke about football teams, and people know they have value. They see the cost of the players. It's harder to do when you're a university, but we did find out some stuff. They also know, like I can tell you the cups in our nightclub cost 5 cents a pop. The team owners know what the towel bills are for all the players when they go to the showers and stuff like that. They know the numbers. By the way, that catch right there netted the school $2.8 million. University of Georgia football program makes $208 million a year, and they scored 144 points that year. So that's the point per revenue. Your city is worth your county is worth 18.8 billion. The University of Georgia program, I don't know their value, but I know what their revenue is. Your revenue is $183 million. Theirs is 207. They're making more money than you're giving your government, which is kind of crazy. But that's Georgia. 130,000 people is supporting that. The numbers, however, when you look at the numbers of people, that's $1,000, y'all are producing $1,300 per person. They're doing it with 93,000 people, 6 times a year, 558,000 people divided into this. They're pulling about $370 per person, but they're only doing it 6 times a year. Your staff has to show up 5 times a week, 52 times a year. That's happening. So 300, I don't know how many, 280 days a year, basically. So maybe Kirby can help you with your street crew. I don't know, get Bobo in there, or they can fix a pipe. I'm kidding. So I'll just stop there. I know that I've gone over, so we'll just go ahead and go right into questions. And we have 2 mics down here. I can also repeat the question as well, and Mark's going to run around with some mics. Was that all too nerdy at night? Ma'am, if you could just shout it out, I'll repeat it.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. I've been waiting for an hour to do this. May I ask respectfully how many mayor commission meetings you sat through in Athens-Clarke County?
How many commission meetings?
Yes.
Well, I sat through one yesterday.
Well, you got through one.
Yeah.
But the people that are sitting in this room understand that the things that you are saying about asphalt increasing in price, when we watched roads not being paid for years ago, when money was coming in, and now because the money has gone out to things that were not infrastructure, we've watched it dollar by dollar. You talk about University of Georgia, maybe they're watching their balance sheet.
Yeah.
But it's not being watched in Athens-Clarke County.
Well, okay, ma'am.
It's very, very upset to watch this, to say this is University of Georgia's fault.
What's the question for me?
The question is, you say, understand the game.
Yeah.
The team owner knows the amount of the towels.
Yes.
Why do you think they know the amount of the towels?
Because they have to run a business. Now, so hang on. In defense of your city, they did hire us to do this analysis so we can have this number. So that's why I'm here. You know, it's like you now have the numbers. They need the numbers. You have to hold them accountable. I can't be here for all your meetings. If you want to get into crazy politics, come with me to Asheville. I will show you some crazy stuff. We have witches that show up at our council meetings and hold seances. Come to Asheville. You guys are way better than we are.
You said if you want a cake, you're going to have to buy the ingredients.
Yeah.
Anybody listening to this saying knows that. But when you say, do you want a cake this level? And we can have a cake this level and a cake this level. Which cake do you want? Oh, we want the big cake.
Well, ma'am.
But we know we have to pay for it. Evidently they don't.
No, ma'am. They will pay for those projects, if you do them well, will carry their own cost. That's what this analysis is about. Thank you.
I have a question. Does Asheville have a parking mandate for commercial construction?
It depends. We didn't have a parking in our downtown. We got rid of our parking requirements in our downtown in 1987 or something like that. We haven't had a downtown parking requirement since then. Over time, we've increased that boundary around downtown, so the first mile outside of that, and then along bus corridors. And I'm pretty sure we just got rid of parking requirements across the whole city. I haven't been paying attention in the last month, but I think we're doing that.
How did that go? How did that come about?
Well, it came about, so the question is, how did us get rid of parking come about? Well, it came about because our downtown was dead as a doornail. And the theory was to get your building renovated, you had to tear down the building next to it to make a surface parking lot if I was following the requirements. And the city got wise to that, and they said, well, rather than tear buildings down, why don't we develop a parking strategy for the whole downtown? And they went on a parking structure development. The city built 3 parking garages in the 90s, and they started giving out parking credits to people or selling parking cards to people. So they actually saw it as an infrastructure that had to be collaborative with the development. So that's the thing. It's like if a car is moving around on the street, we treat it as a public commodity. It's socialized. All of us are going to pay for that street. But as soon as the car stops, it becomes a private problem. Where the city was like, well, that's not true. It's an infrastructure. So a lot of people got thrown out of office for voting to build parking garages back when downtown was empty. But now, when you all come to Asheville, is it easy to get parking? No. It's got to drive around, or you got to go to a parking structure. But thank you for coming to Asheville. Ma'am?
Hi, thank you.
Okay, there we go.
You're live.
I understand the overview, and I'm actually from Miami, so welcome. But I wanted to know, all right, so we covered, and I love the breakdown from the residential to the mixed use to the commercial property. What is happening to all of these properties, including some just to mention the West Broad Elementary School, and over 268 homes on East Side alone. This is where I've lived over the past 3 years. These structures are not being used. They are buildings that are just not being used at all. We, I think in Athens, need to come up with something that challenges those building owners to do something with it, because we talk a lot about what's happening for the properties that are being used, what is happening, and how is that aiding in the decay of a community of these properties that are not.
Yeah, I think that's a great question as far as what to do with vacant structures, vacant landlords. It depends. Absenteeism depends on ownership analysis. So you might have properties that are tied up in heirs issues, where the family members can't agree on a property. Oftentimes, it's just depends on the legacy of how long that property is here and what the family's status was and their ability to hire an attorney back in the day. And they may not have had that. So it causes problems for the grandkids. We talked about this yesterday. Is this something that the university could help you out with? In South Bend, Indiana, the law school volunteers to help with low-wealth neighborhoods to clean up heir properties, to help the families retain their wealth, and to help kind of curb displacement, if you will. Buffalo, I mean, you all aren't as bad off as Buffalo. Buffalo is losing population, and they had a real hard time getting houses occupied. So what they did is they cut a deal with college kids, and they said you can buy a house for $1 as long as you commit to staying here for 10 years. And they were doing something, anything, to try to replenish their population because they were losing people. And what the theory was is that if they stay for 10 years, they're probably going to put down roots and stay forever. And it actually worked in Buffalo. So there's a lot of, it's hard for me to say what the problem is. We did like a 30,000-foot view analysis with some drill downs, but that wasn't part of our scope to get into the ownership issues. But it is a good question of who's local, who's not, what are the properties, and I think that would be the next level to ask. Question up there?
Joe George, Kalachek, Rockdale County, good to see you again. This information is very valuable. I'm going around the state of Georgia providing an 8-minute video that Joe does regarding suburbia is subsidized. And then I follow it up with my colleague, Greg Ramsey here from Village Habitat. And as you look at your planning, we now have a proposal into Putnam County, along with Eatonton, Rockdale County, with Conyers. This information that Joe has provided, and I have to applaud your commissioners for letting him come in and paying him for this analysis, because the first thing that any city or county needs is a very good playbook. If you don't have a good financial smart planning playbook, along with a conservation and sustainability playbook, then you will not know how to develop your future land use maps. So, Joe, we thank you very much, and we've got several counties that are going to be utilizing your analysis here over the next few months. Thank you very much for coming to Athens, Georgia.
Thanks, George. Ma'am? It takes a second to turn on. Is it? There you go.
I'm Kimberly Matthews, and I have lived in Athens since 1971 and seen it all in many changes. But I was noticing in your presentation, you're talking about the cake that you want to bake. I noticed that the industry, like poultry processing, all these were apparently negative impacts on our community.
Yeah.
The things that seem to generate an income all seem to be a tourist type of impact, like the downtown and that sort of thing. So we're trying to envision what we want for our county. How do we find places of employment or people that will employ people that will pay more than a hospitality wage, or, you know, how do we create places where people can work and can afford to keep these structures going?
Well, I think that's not a fair characterization of the presentation, to be honest. A townhouse isn't a tourist, right? A townhouse is somebody living in a smaller footprint house, and it's more productive. If you drill into the model, you know, an attorney's office out in a strip mall with this massive parking lot is not going to be as productive as an attorney's office in that 8-story building, right? Because it's more efficient in the 8-story building. So it's going to depend on where. Also, from a tourism perspective, you know, it's just, that's part of your community. You can't jettison UGA, Some people may want to. I'm not going to speak for everybody, but that's also your community and your commerce. The same way tourism is my commerce in Asheville. Our baseball team is called the Asheville Tourists. Yet my community passed a hotel moratorium against tourism. Unbelievably dumb. What ended up happening is that demand ended up going into Airbnbs in my community. Anybody stayed in an Airbnb when they went to Asheville? We have 4,000 Airbnbs in my community. You know what that does to the housing in my community for my staff that can't afford to live there? So I've got 18 people on my staff. We pay tremendous taxes in my office, and I can't have my staff can't afford to live there. So these are all things you're going to be wrestling with. Yes, the college is a big impact. It's also a huge benefit. It brings a ton of jobs, high-paying jobs at the university. So, yeah?
Yeah, I just want to, we've had this question come up about that one bit of data about those industries and how they look like they're a drawdown. And so this is where looking at this much information,
Okay.
looking at the information the way Joe prepares it, we're looking at the sales tax revenue of those industries, which is not great. It's not a lot of sales tax revenue, but there's a lot of infrastructure that goes with it. The chicken processing plant uses a lot of water, right? But the cool thing about the processing plant is the job creation, which Joe noted in the presentation. So it's about trade-offs. There are certain things that we need to do to create job opportunities that may affect the tax digest, but we know people need to have incomes, right? So the point of this is for us to understand those dynamics.
Yeah.
So that if we are going to do job creation that maybe hits the tax digest, we just do it with our eyes wide open. And that's okay. It's okay for people to have jobs. We want that. And sometimes we have to use our resources to create those job opportunities that have family supporting wages. And we as a community decide that that's okay. That's a way for us to put our resources to work to help stabilize households.
You know, I tend to think of things in analogies, like my family has a history of heart disease, but I like eating pizza. You're not going to get me to stop eating pizza, but when I do eat pizza, I balance it out with a salad or exercise. So there's going to be projects that may be upside down or may be negative, but when you go into it with your eyes wide open of this is a trade-off we need right now, and we'll do salad down the road. You know, just it's iterative. Man behind you.
I'll be quick, but it's 3 parts, kind of technical. One, I saw a lot of real property taxation value. Did you account for personal property, especially with the businesses and their inventories? Part 2 is, did you factor in tabs? And part
Yes.
3, what about the historical zoning the county likes to do?
What the historical zoning what?
Historical districts and how it affects property value.
Well, the historic tax credit's going to go to the actual property owner, the investor. It's just, we're pulling the tax bills that are coming out of the properties. Basically, what you're seeing is a cash flow model of the money that comes out of those properties. And so if the property's valued, then it's in that tax bill, right? And then it goes onto the map. The sales tax is same deal. So if we can find the revenue, if we can hook it up with a PIN on the property, where the money's coming from, where the PIN is, done. It's your information.
But what about historical districts that limit the availability of how you can develop?
We're just looking at the tax bills.
Okay.
You know?
What about the real versus personal? Did you include that?
Yeah.
Okay. You just didn't mention, I just saw land value, building value.
Well,
sales
I was
tax.
breaking it down. It was like, if you look at the titles, they'll say like market value, it'll say land value. Those are the buckets of money that we're looking at. And then, like in the case of the chicken plant, the value isn't in the building; it's in all that machinery that's in there, that's going into that property. But that's.
So just to be clear, you did include personal property in
Correct.
your slides.
I'm 99% sure that that's in there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, you keep saying Athens needs money. I have been trying for years to buy land that Athens-Clarke County owns. They own hundreds of vacant lots that have never been built on.
Okay.
They own large tracts of land scattered throughout downtown. They will not sell it. So apparently, they don't need the money because the developers will come in and buy it, improve it, and pay tax on it, and create housing. What we need is workforce housing, and the areas that the city owns is workforce housing areas. How do we get this? Bruce has done an excellent job. I've dealt with him for years. He has done a wonderful job, I tell you. How do we get the city to play ball?
Well, we were just talking about, that's a great question. So what do you do with municipally owned property? And I'm going to go ahead and throw UGA in there too, because that's a big footprint that's non-taxable. We did a project in Salt Lake County for the county. They have a strong mayor for their county, and he asked us to analyze all the publicly held lands and the opportunities that are there. Salt Lake County is 50% non-taxable. Like, let that wash over you for a second. And their county is about 5 times the size of your county. So the first thing that we did is we stripped down any kind of steep slope. That's sacred to them. You're not going to build on that. That stays non-taxable. The wetlands out by the Great Salt Lake, the airport, that's not going to change. Even with that, you filtered it down to somewhat's doable property. You're talking 44 square miles. That's something that can be done in Europe. They do these things called public wealth funds, where they treat it as an asset. They work with a developer and they say, okay, here's what we want. We want student housing, we want business incubation space, we want some affordable housing for workers, and we want it all to be green. And the developer says back, here's what it's going to cost to do that. And Copenhagen, the city, goes, great, we're in it together. We're going to work together on this, and when you make money, we make money. And that's going to be floated back into a revolving fund for the community to use to other purposes, the rent that we get as a municipality. And then 80 years from now, we get the land back. And the developer knows the terms and goes, deal, this is what it's going to be. It's not going to be the money that you could have gotten if you just sold it to me, but it's going to be discounted. But it's an arrangement. The city should be doing that. That's a very logical next step, to look at all of that land and say, okay, what's stuff that we really don't need that we can work with people? There are all these other great community needs that you all have, and let's kind of put a list together of what we want to do. It's totally doable.
Russ is doing something similar to that, where they lease you the land, you build your house on it.
Yeah.
100 years from now, they get the land.
And I would say the Housing Authority is doing the same with Jack R. Wells redevelopment, with the Bethel Midtown redevelopment. They have a strategy that they're actually implementing step by step of taking their land holdings, which we all know are one story, kind of flat, other than Denny Towers, right? And what they're looking at is how to kind of sweep those units together so that folks aren't displaced. They have that opportunity to remain, but it frees up land. So we have highly visible public housing, which is cool. We've got public housing in town. That's not a bad thing. But a lot of that public housing is sitting on commercial frontage, Baxter Street, Broad, you name it. And so they are systematically going through, and it is a multi-year process to do this. It's not easy, but we've already started. So we're already working on our second project. They have plans for a third and a fourth. So we're maturing into that way of thinking, but it does take some coordination.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to segue from housing to more discussions of housing, our community is talking about the lack of affordable housing, like most places are. Given your, and the need, one of the solutions being we just need to build more housing, there need to be more options. So given your cost of community services model, is it a better strategy to build, add more density to areas that are already sort of single-family dense, walkable, near commercial and mixed-use areas, or is it more effective to build density and more housing in areas that are very low producing now? You mentioned sort of the large parking lots as an area to look at.
It's kind of hard for me to answer that, because it's sort of like you've got a lot of different, think of this, rather than a silver bullet, you've got to do silver buckshot. You know, there's a lot of different things you could do, and it's going to require a little bit of an analysis of what's a right fit. You know, can a neighborhood thicken up a little bit? Well, that depends. I don't know, I'd have to see the street and see how, what the opportunities are, but you can typically find in most communities, there's a little bit of surgery you can do in each of the neighborhoods. Obviously, the students want to be closer to the campus. If they're further away from campus, you have to have a transportation option for them. So you just have to think through the what's a fit and what's an opportunity. But students can generally put up with a tighter space, but you're also seeing trends change in the boomer population, where folks want to downsize. They want to still stay in the neighborhood, but they want to age in place. And does your neighborhood afford that? Where somebody can actually stay in the neighborhood, maintain their community, which is very important sociologically, but also get a different option so they don't have a big yard anymore. You know, I think there's lots of different ways to handle this. But the easiest thing to think about is, do you already pay for the street, and are you getting enough money back? Think of it as a 2-drink minimum in the neighborhood. And is it positive? Some neighborhoods are going to be different. Sir?
Somebody over there.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. Both you and Bruce started off talking about data. And I very much believe that data-free analysis leads to analysis-free decision-making, which we don't want. So with that in mind, my question is, when are we going to see the report from all the work that you have done so that people can get engrossed in the data, really inform themselves, and be able to ask more intelligent questions? So
Sure.
when can we see the report?
Well, tomorrow you're going to have a PDF copy of this presentation, last night's presentation, and this morning's presentation. I'll put them on a shared drive and get those over to Bruce.
The PDF of the charts is not a report.
Okay.
So when are we going to see a report?
How many-
We spent a couple $100,000 for this analysis. We deserve a report.
We'll give you the PDF copies of the shows
That's
as
not
well.
what I'm
Hang on,
asking
hang
for.
on, hang on, hang
When
on.
are we going to get a report? The public deserves a report for the public money that's been spent for your work.
We're still working. We're doing a development tool to figure out how to
That's
do.
not my question.
Okay.
My question is,
What's
when
in the
are we
scope?
going
What's in
to
the
see
scope
a
of the report?
So, Mr. McClendon, your question's a good one.
Well,
And
then when are we going to see the report?
so when his work is finished, you will.
When is his work going to be finished?
Okay, so this is us meeting with the community, which you also like us to do, so we're doing that. So we're having some time. This is input, right? So this is data. What you're doing right now is data.
That is not answering my question.
No, I'm-
When are we going to see a report?
Time out. I'm going to answer your question. So when this process is complete, we know that we have to have an executive summary. We know that we have to have attachments to that for folks that want to dig into the data, and we will provide that. We also know that folks don't necessarily want to dig in all the time, so we've got to have a deliverable where they can watch a video of Joe speaking, so we'll have that. So we will have all those things. We're at a moment where he's presenting what they found out. We've had this for a week.
So to be clear, what you're saying is not until you package up something to go to the planning commission will we see anything that resembles a report.
No, we don't have to present this to the Planning Commission. In fact, the Planning Commission has been invited to be here just like you. So this is the presentation to the Planning Commission.
So are you making the commitment that there will be a report
Yes,
for the public?
yes, sir.
And we will have ample time to review it?
You will have the time that you want.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Second point I want to make is, somebody brought this up a little bit earlier, is, I've spent probably the last 5 years reading in depth every budget document that Athens-Clarke County produces. And when I look at the numbers that you have up there in terms of the deficit, in terms of infrastructure spending, I just don't believe the numbers. I think the numbers are actually higher when you actually go in and read the description of the backlogs of work and the scope of the backlog and the complexity of the backlog that we have, okay, department by department. So I would encourage you to go back and actually read those documents and then begin to make some judgments about the size of that. And the third point is, Athens-Clarke County has ample revenue, plenty of revenue. The problem is not revenue, it's how they spend it. Your analysis seems to be making the point that all the decisions that the commission makes are good decisions. Well, they're not good decisions. So one of the issues here in Clarke County is we've got plenty of revenue. And the last thing I'll say is, you seem to be reading off the same script that the Athens urbanists and others are that density, and less parking, more and more public transportation. And if that's the whole purpose of this, I think it undermines the credibility of what you are doing. Because we don't need any more density in Athens. We're choking on density already. Thank you.
Is there a question?
If I could ask, you had mentioned and he did about infrastructure, the sewer and water. And I was under the impression that there was a reserve, a sinking fund or whatever, to fund over the next 20 or 30, 40 years, that we had enough monies to replace infrastructure, et cetera. In fact, there was one of the fees, I think, went down in the last couple of years on the water and the sewer because we were fully funded. Is that not the case?
Complicated answer from a planner speaking about engineering. So we have a number of funding sources that are earmarked for a variety of certain efforts. For example, there is dedicated funding to turn the quarry into a reservoir so that this community is no longer dependent on sharing water resources with any other neighboring communities. There is funding set aside to do that so that we can be independent and not codependent. So that's one funding line item. There is funding that's earmarked for sanitary sewer pipe replacement, and that's almost a generational project that's coming together right now. So for each of the things you listed, there are separate line items. I can't quote you the dollar amount, but I know some of those have already been drawn down. There are projects that are already happening, not far from here, actually, over towards Beechwood. That first wave of sanitary sewer line replacement took place. There's another wave that's going to be happening upstream from that pipe. Those are all drawdowns off of those funds. If we could talk after the meeting, I can get you connected to those numbers.
My impression was that the water and the sewer funds were independent and they were self-funded. That's not necessarily the case.
Everything's interrelated, right? And so the bills that we all pay as residents, whether it's a utility bill or it's our tax bill, as Joe's shown how they split, those payments that we make as residents get slotted into different funds to do different capital improvements and maintenance projects. So it gets a little complicated because they get chopped up and split into different line items. But that accounting exists. I can share that with you. Okay, thank you.
Sir?
Quayton Payne, thank you for your presentation. I've sat in on a lot of these. Civil engineer here in Athens. I run a couple of businesses. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm always concerned that we grab little snapshots of this information. We grab a snapshot of that information and we base a lot of conclusions and a lot of projections off of that information instead of gaining a full projection of what the entire picture looks like. Your presentation last night triggered a lot of phone calls to me saying, hey, you gotta hear this presentation, you gotta hear what this guy's saying, we got a deficit, we gotta fix it, we're running out of money. And I was like, so I called. I served on the tax assessor's board for 12 years, so I know how our tax assessor's office works. I know about the digest, how that works, and how it's all put together. So I called down there and I asked them, I said, what has been the growth of our digest over the past 5 years? Our digest has grown 75% in revenue over the past 5 years. That is a great problem to have. Meaning we have almost doubled the amount of money that we're taking in Athens-Clarke County in tax revenue. So I think if you were to look at the entire picture, Mr. McClendon, I'll agree with what you're saying. We don't have a tax problem, we have a spending problem.
Sir, yeah. You got it, just takes a second.
Roderick Flanagan, thank you for the presentation. One of my questions was already answered about the tax allocation district and the conversation around that. I know we have several tax allocation districts where we're leveraging, I guess, some of the future tax gains for development in certain areas that need development. One of my questions though is related to like policy I guess, baked into your analysis, and some of the experience you have in other similar cities, like where they use these incentives to grow the revenue for the city. Have you seen any prominent examples where affordable housing policy or zoning was changed to include some of those things that actually work or that have great impact for both renters and homeowners, for low-income residents? That's one of the questions I have.
Okay, thank you. Like back to the comment earlier with what Salt Lake is doing with their portfolio and using their land to basically take land from non-taxable to affordable. You know, affordable is still paying taxes, and those taxes are better than zero, right? So scrutinizing and analyzing your currently the public lands that you hold, and also talk with your partners, the housing authority, the university, churches, helping churches do development on their property for low income and affordable housing development. There's lots of different options that are out there. There's helping stimulate local builders so that you have many hands make good work and get more people building housing. That's there's a group called the Incremental Developers Alliance that does developer training for entrepreneurs in the community and help people create jobs and housing at the same time. There's lots of things you can do to handle this. As far as the earlier comment on the roads and the infrastructure, that's all a moving target, and when they come in, you may have a lot of money, but when did that road get built, and when is it coming due for that reconstruction? So syncing those timelines, I'm just showing you a time in place right now. There's a lot of moving variables, as Bruce said, on what expenditures are happening, what's on the docket to get spent. This is going to change and iterate over time. But yeah, I would agree with you to go out and find examples. We can give you some examples that we've seen around. But yeah, there's lots of communities that go in it with that thinking of producing affordable housing in areas where you want to grow up the wealth of that part of the community.
Yeah, thank you for that. Also, I just had one more follow-up.
Sure.
But I would love to get to your email so I can start an exchange so I can get some of those examples.
Definitely.
You made an interesting point last night too about some of the tax revenues and like tax code that's outdated. I would love to hear, I guess, some more ideas around how to address that. I know you mentioned in last night's presentation about talking to the tax assessors or updating the tax language, the formula, because it was created in an outdated racist era where you have like some low-income people of color paying much more than higher wealthy people, based off of your assessment and analysis. And so you have this subsidy that's going on for some of these wealthier neighborhoods that's on the backs of.
Well,
as you explained it, yeah.
Well, that was my community that I showed last night.
Right.
Yeah, and it was pretty brutal. So there is a video online if anybody wants to watch it. We did an analysis of the property assessment in Buncombe County, and what we discovered was that the bottom 40% were being overassessed to about $1 million a year of overcharge, and the top 60%, of which I'm part of that, not at the high end, is being discounted $6.9 million a year. And so my city and my county adopted a reparations fund, and we requested that $7 million be put into a reparations fund until they fix the system. The other problem that I had with my community is we assess Airbnbs as houses. That's not fair. They're hotel rooms. So they should be assessed as a commercial product and commercial revenue, and you should be getting that taxes because they are a commercial product. So in my town, we have 4,000 Airbnbs in my community. That's not an insignificant number. And so why is a hotel valued on its income as a commercial product and an Airbnb isn't? It's a hotel. So that's something that I think needs to change in a lot of communities. I didn't analyze that or the sales ratio for your community. I just showed my community last night. We've got the assessor guy going over here.
But I'll follow with you.
Yeah.
Can I respond?
Sure, yeah.
It's my turn. I'm Frida Love, and I live in a very low income, or supposedly, community. It's called Rock Springs Homes, right down the street. Some people may think that it's falling apart, and I certainly didn't see it presented in your chart. Okay, because I was just about to go off on you.
Bring it.
The teaching part of me and definitely the Army part of me comes out. But anyway, I can see in my community, phase 1, which is the building, because we all pay taxes. I don't own any property, but I definitely pay taxes. Phase 2, there are stores on the opposite side of the street. So why can't those stores help with jobs, with some type of initiative for the teens that are getting out of school in 2 weeks so they can earn a living or earn an income? They don't need to earn a living, they need to concentrate on education. But they all need support. Even I need support. I'm not walking on my own accord. I use my cane, which is my leg, part of my leg. But I enjoy my house. So that's just phase 1. Phase 2, we're in a desert. What type of store? We talk about Walmart. Walmart is on Lexington Road. In order for me to get there, I need to take 3 buses. Thank God for public transportation. But I'm at this meeting tonight because I no longer can afford a single dwelling house. And I work, I have a PhD, but I can't utilize my PhD and make a living. I'm disabled. Not mentally, but physically. And I see the challenges in my community that the single mothers have. And it's tearful that Athens-Clarke County, yes, it's come a long way, but it has a longer way to go. And we're talking about money that we really need to get because we're in a deficit. Come on now. As my grandmother taught me and my dad, we grew up Army, you put on your boots, you lace them up, and you work hard together. We're talking about communities. So the community incorporates people. Yes, we need money, but everything doesn't cost. You can barter. And we need to get back to that. Your presentation was great, but it still lacks some points because there are communities that I visited personally. It took me 2 years to get a roof over my head. I had to live in a storage unit for 2 years almost before I got that little roof at Rock Springs community. And it's hard. Yes, I had income, my little check on the 3rd, but you can't live on that check because it's not enough income. An apartment out there, 3 times that amount. 3 times. The students that are graduating from UGA, they won't be able to even get a roof over their heads. They'll see. All I can say is at this meeting, and I was blessed to be here, we have to do better. We have to work together. We have to think of more than just the bottom dollar. Because in the end, that dollar ain't gonna do you a diddly bit of good. Thank you.
Ma'am, I can just repeat your question. Ma'am, what's your question? We got a question right here.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's my fault. She was ahead of you, sorry.
Okay, so you said earlier that we are looking at 2 different cities, and I just wanted you to speak more about that.
2 different cities? Yeah, it's, okay, so when I said 2 different cities, I was framing it from a reference of your annexation patterns and development patterns, and the geography of what your city was in those periods. So I went through the start of your city and how it kind of grew over different eras and different periods. The best that we could do based on the data that we had in the maps and to correlate it with your growth spurts that happened. You've had growths and you've had contraction. But there was a pretty significant jump that happened after 45 and a lot of American cities did this. A lot of American cities really changed their form post 45, some a little later than others. And actually, if you go to the Sun Belt, places like Gilbert, Arizona, outside of Phoenix, is still growing at the rapidity that a lot of places in the South were doing in the 60s and 70s. So it's what time is this place? What time did you change? And to think of it like humans, like my growth pattern when I was a teenager is completely different than what I am now. I behaved differently, I ate different food, I didn't have to exercise as much when I was in my 20s. You know, it's just, cities have the same kind of eras, and you can kind of figure them out in the annexation patterns. But your demarcation is around 45. What happened before 45 and what happened after 45?
Okay, and I think so to I guess further to that point though, this 2 different cities that you're talking about, it may be one type or one way or in the world of whiteness, right? But in the religious world, right? Like this has been a tale of 2 cities for a very long time, right?
I would agree with you.
The beginning of what you showed, right? And so I'm really curious and wondering where that factors in to the future, because what I'm hearing is a lot of data and analysis, and I'm a PhD student, right? So I get data and analysis, but to me there's this underlying why and like what we're really going to do about it that centers people, right? And not just one group of people over the other, which is historically what's been done, right? Is Black people have been displaced. And so a lot of what I'm hearing right now, it says to me that there's a potential, again, for more Black people to be displaced. And so I'm uncomfortable with that being the center of this conversation.
I would agree with you 100%. And I think that is a very valid and important conversation to have, and it needs to be addressed. What happened with white flight? In my community, we had a red line map. The evidence is in that map. Your town was not big enough to have that red line map, but you did it through other means, right? So there are policies, I mean, we can go down the list. Zoning was racist. The tax system and how tax district boundaries are drawn in tax neighborhoods had racial implications. There's all of that needs to come to the surface, needs to be part of the conversation. As far as that demarcation line of 1945, yes, a lot of that was white flight. There was, some folks were given the ability to move further out, and it was facilitated. They weren't paying for that road. You know, it was put on the backs of other folks. But the segregation issues that you have in your community go well deeper than 1945.
Right, and I think part of my point is we have a lot of people who are working on these things, right, and who are passionate about it. I always believe that we don't have an issue with bad people, we have an issue with people who are unaware of the consequences of the things that they do. Similar to the Larry that you showed earlier, right? White guy, probably very well-meaning, but not realizing that this is deep-rooted in some sort of oppressive or whatever it is, right?
Are you talking about last night?
No. In the presentation, you showed a Larry. The tax assessor, right? So it's like when you have people who are working in these positions and they're doing what they know to do and holding up the system, right?
That's a systemic bias.
Yes, exactly. And so that's kind of my point here is that like, how do we get more understanding and more involvement to ensure that these issues don't persist, right?
Yeah, I think
and get worse.
Raise them up. We need to get this stuff out. Data's the place to start. The data's going to be black and white, pardon the pun, but it's going to be what's going on here and why is this happening? But you've got to start from a data-driven perspective, put it out there, and have the appetite to dig deep and have the uncomfortable conversations. We've
I'm
only,
pretty sure a lot of us in here probably already assessed the data and provided the data. Roger, has the data been shown? Okay, so we've shown the data. So that's the issue, is that we show the data, nothing happens, right?
NCM reports, there are lots of reports.
There's lots
Yeah.
of reports.
it's, look, I'm going to agree with you on all of this. It took 4 years before my assessor got fired.
We just
You
don't
know?
like what to do. Like,
That's all I can say is you got to keep on keeping on. You got to push.
Yeah.
You know, the arc of justice has got to take some bending. You got to get on that arc and push it. And it's going to be uncomfortable for a lot of people. I agree with you.
We got time for your question, ma'am, and one more.
Hi, my name is Mara Zuniga. My question is the following. In your report, are you going to have the social effects of something like this? Now, the reason I ask that is because you began your presentation, which by the way was excellent, allowing us to align with corporate thinking. Now, as a small business person, I'm not a corporation per se as a corporate thinking, because as small business people usually make decisions more on community levels. That's my opinion. But when you get on a corporate level, and I'm surprised that our mayor's on board with that kind of presentation, him claiming to be a progressive. And a lot of issues like this young lady in the front spoke about, people being pushed out of this community. That is a huge problem here in Athens. There's a lot of issues that are being brought up as problems, but the solutions are more geared to the wealthy. So when you say we need housing and you speak about these mixed-use properties that are going downtown, and you said baby boomers who would sell their house and move there, these are not lower income people. When you say that the businesses that are going to go in there, they're only getting 5 to 10 cents more. I was shocked by that. I mean, you would think that, I was expecting to hear something like maybe $5 more, something more. But 5 to 10 cents more, it's not really an incentive. You know, it really sounds to me, once again, how this local government is working, which is trying to bring up issues that actually exist in this community, but the problem solution is geared more for the rich. So my question is, are you going to have in your report the social effects, what we will see when this occurs, when we have this mix? Who are they geared to? Who are the people that will have to leave? Because it's not only the lower income, we also have elder people that are on fixed income. Nobody talks about the elderly, but there's a lot of people not getting a lot of money who didn't, report a lot of money when they had to because they didn't know about IRS guidelines and things like that. But there's a lot of people like that have their homes, have paid for their homes, can't afford their homes because of all the other rich geared solutions that are coming up.
So, how do I address that? Ma'am, you have 135,000 people with 135,000 different stories in your community. I can't get through all of those. What we did is, from a business-to-business perspective, I have, my office is 18 people, small business. What we did for your community would be similar to us being an accountant working with you and doing your balance sheet and your P&L and maybe your accounts receivable. It's just, what's your data to run your business? Do I know each of your employees and what their personal situation is? We didn't get into that. The sociological effects are way deeper and takes more fine tuning and more care and attention than what we can do with your P&L and your balance sheet. This is more cold. It's more, what's going on? Where's the pipe? Is it being paid for? It's very simple that way. But it doesn't get to those deeper issues that you're talking about, because there's a lot of trauma and a lot of past histories that are going on that needs to be raised to the surface. It's not a simple conversation that happens in the span of a year project. This is going to be an ongoing thing. The same way that you and I have to have ongoing conversations with our team, with our employees and our partners who we work with, and they have issues going on with their lives that we have to care for as part of being a business owner. So that's a dynamic that has to happen over time with all of your community. That's going to be an ongoing part. But we still have to make sure that Brooke and I are paid. We still have to look at our balance sheet. Brooke needs a health insurance. I do too. So we have to worry about that. But those are really cold numbers. I want to make sure Brooke is happy. You know, that takes a conversation of me and Brooke. That takes a lunch. You know, that's a much more touchy-feely thing to have because we're humans. But this is a little bit on the cold side. It's where's your sales tax come from? Where does your money come from? And it's not. It doesn't get into that stuff, the sociological side. I will recommend a book called Happy City, which is a really bad name for the book, but it gets into the sociological effects and the meaning that helps you with community connections. What it does to your serotonin level, how to measure that. And it's a book that's written by a Canadian, and Canadians pay attention to that stuff because they pay attention to their health industry better than we do. So it's just, there's some good stuff out there. It's just not part of our practice, if that makes sense. We're the cold accountant on this. I hate to say that. I'm a designer by training, so I'm more of an artist, but it's just like, we just make maps of the data. Oh.
I'm gonna be quick. So I'm really interested in this tax assessment piece of it. Was it in Asheville you were saying that there was like basically like manipulation in the tax assessment?
It's not manipulation. It's just it's layers of code. It's obfuscation. Sir, this is my tax system, and I'll talk about it. I'm not talking about your county. I'm talking about Buncombe County. And if you want to be schooled on it, I'd be glad to pull the PowerPoint open. What I found in my county was that the richest neighborhood in the entire state was losing $40 million over a 10-year period. That was underpaying $4.4 million a year in taxes. I found a 22-acre parcel with a 16,000 square foot house on it that was valued at $3 million. It was valued at $4 million 10 years ago. That property should be a $25 million property, period. We were finding systemically high wealth individuals, when they were selling their house, they were being valued a lot less than what they bought them for. When I raised the issue with my assessor, he told me to my face, rich people always overpay for houses. My law in North Carolina says the value of the house shall be what somebody will pay for it in the marketplace, period. A willing exchange of property, no one has a gun to their head. So why is it in my low wealth neighborhoods, the taxation value was higher than the purchase price, and in the high wealth neighborhoods, the assessed value was lower than the purchase price? Those are the questions that I raised. I also raised the fact that in low wealth neighborhoods, they were half as likely to appeal their taxes, and they were half as likely to win at those appeals than high wealth individuals. And those are conversations to have. Is the information fair enough to my community and partners and neighbors that are of low wealth that they can understand how to do a proper appeal, or are they being jettisoned because they're not saying the right thing? That's systemic bias.
I guess I would like to take this one step further, I guess, for our local representative.
We didn't do this analysis here.
I was gonna say, can we do this in Athens? Has this been done? Because that boggles my mind, and I assume it's probably, systemic, happens more places than would expect.
So I noticed that you didn't have any, of the parcels that the students are in, downtown, with the revenue and expenditures up. Was there a reason for that, like the mark?
We did every parcel in the county.
No, downtown.
Every parcel. Look, we can't pull all 250,000 parcels and highlight each one of them, so we just took some samples. But if you look at that map, it's every single parcel that's in the county. So if you want, you can zoom into the downtown and look at it. Or if you have this individual parcel and you want to email me, we can get to the numbers. Okay. Go ahead.
Are you going to answer my question? I assume that's why you have the mic.
I've got I wouldn't point at anybody. So we've got, in very limited time, we are the guests of Clarke Central High School. So we do have to leave at 8 o'clock. And as I looked at my watch, I think we're past it. So here's what I would propose. And I'm going to say this because I love this, and I wish we could stay here till tomorrow. We've got a lot of questions here that are beyond the scope of this study, and that's cool. In fact, that's That's fantastic. There are a lot of things that we care about. There are a lot of things that we're concerned about. And the planning department is A-okay with coming out and opening a conversation. And we know full well when we hold these, that we're going to talk about everything that's weighing on your heart. We're going to talk about everything that you talk about with your neighbor. We just know, right? But the scope of this is our starting point. So I promise you, it's a starting point. We've got more to do. Quazon knows. We've got more to do. And there's enough of us in this room. There are a lot of folks that left that are a part of the solution. There's folks that weren't here tonight that are part of the solution, right? This is a start. This isn't the answer, but it is a fundamental question we've got to ask, is how are we going to pay for our future, right? That's really what this is. How are we going to pay for our future? And so we got to get real with what's coming in, what's going out, what haven't we paid for, what do we need to pay for, and make good decisions. All of this is about making good decisions moving forward. So the sins of our fathers are what they are. We can call them what they are, right? But this is a start. So from a staff standpoint, from a consultant standpoint, we are trying to be honest, available, and as raw as you want to be. But this is a beginning. So I thank you all for being here. I would love to talk to each of you as we move this way, but I want to be able to come back here again. So we got to hold up our end of the deal and wrap up at 8 o'clock. Thank you all.